Hi, I'm Chuck Gilmore with Power to Sing Live, number 111, 111. Welcome to the show today. We're going to be talking about vibrato, specifically how to develop or improve vibrato. And the interesting thing about this topic is it applies to learning how to sing in general. So I'm hoping that the principles we talk about in the next few minutes are going to help you in every way with your voice. So, welcome to the show. I want to just start out by asking you this question: Do you have a regular process of learning and practicing vibrato? Do you have a regular process of doing that? Because in many cases, we don't have a process. We're going to talk a bit about the process of doing that. So let me just be really professional here and say, that's me. So, hi, and we're approaching in the States here and in the general Christian world the advent of Christmas celebration in another week from today. I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I'll go online briefly and just say hi, or maybe I'll take the day off. I don't know. I hate to break this run of 111 shows. Hey, George, nice to have you with us today. JJ, hello, JJ. Don't recognize your name, JJ Gels. But nice to have you here today, JJ. And Aaron, nice to have you here. Hey, George, using another laptop to view you today. George, what's the status or what'd you find out about your home? For those of you who don't know, George Beeman. George lives in Paradise, California. And for those of you who are maybe from around the world and don't know all the details of that, Paradise essentially was burned, destroyed by fire within the last, I don't know, George, what has it been? Paradise, California, probably within the last 60 days, I suppose. So wondering about it, George. Magnet. So Magnet says no, he doesn't have a regular process for practicing vibrato. And so we'll talk a bit about that today. George says he went to the doctor today and he's told me I have some red color on my vocal cord. Did he say what the red color was, George? It sounds like there might have been a little hemorrhage, a little bit of blood, or a little blood vessel that burst. Did he go into detail on that? Jorge, hi. Nice to have you here today. Hey, Mike, nice to have you here with us today. Biddy 4. He told me to take Phenerol, Phenyl and Pulmicort inhaler. I have never heard of that. I don't know anything about that. I'd like to know more, George. That's interesting. He told me to take Phenyl and Pulmicort inhaler. I'm not familiar with that. So like to learn more about that. Okay, you guys. I also want to refer briefly today to this book called Mastery. This is a book by George Leonard. And I heard about this book listening to a Tim Ferriss podcast, and he was interviewing his swim coach. And I don't have his name off the cuff, but big influence on Tim Ferriss's life because he taught him how to swim, something that had been a problem for him all of his life. And he referred to this book of Mastery by George Leonard, and so I went and bought it. And I think there's some wonderful things in here. We're going to talk briefly about some of those things today too. Okay, so this is from Frederick Intels. So now, hi, Chuck from Italy. In my opinion, the vibrato is something that arrives with the stabilization of the larynx, doing exercises every day, like the exercise you teach your student example. Okay, really great point, Frederick. And I'm going to be referring to that daily practice, and so I appreciate that comment. I think it's really right on the money. Akshay says, "Hi, imagine me singing in vibrato." Hi. Okay. George says it was looked at yesterday, and my house is still standing. Been out at November 18, but cannot occupy the house till smoke damage is taken care of. Still at Best Western. Well, George, I guess that's good news and bad news, but are you happy about this? Would have been, on the other hand, maybe it would have been better. Is the smoke damage so bad that it's not going to be recoverable, do you think? Or is it going to be fixable? Is the smoke damage going to be repairable? Very, very big challenge. I have another question for you, George. Are some other homes in your neighborhood still standing, or were you like just, in a lucky little area there, a blessed area that like it missed your house or your neighbor's house? Curious about that. I just think it's such an amazing, incredible human story, and something that all of us are concerned about. I'm so glad that you made it out alive. And that, and I hope that it's a positive that your home is still standing. I hadn't even thought about the smoke damage. I'm sure that must be a real problem with furniture and everything else. So it may be equivalent to a loss anyway when you start thinking about that. Hi, Margina TV. In classical Indian music, vibrato is moving fast between two specific notes. Yes, it's a little bit different, isn't it, in the classical Indian music? From what I've heard, from what I've listened to, there is something that sounds like vibrato. Don't know that it is exactly the same thing. Maybe you can shed more light on that, Margina. George's Tawil says, "How can I know I use my voice in a healthy way?" Well, that's a pretty general question that I guess I would probably need to know a little more about the context of it. How do you know you're speaking in a healthy way? George's Tawil. How do you know that you're using your voice when you speak? Is that what you're referring to? How can I know I use my voice in a healthy way? Are you talking about speaking? Are you talking about singing? Because I think they're very related. If you feel that your voice is being used in a healthy way when you speak, it likely may be the same when you're singing. Not always, but it may be very related. So I don't know, George. It's a kind of one of those things where I probably need a little more information. Summer T says, "I'm planning to take vocal education, and my question is, how many lessons should I take to improve my voice enough to perform live?" Yes, also speak and singing. Okay. So Summer T, how many lessons should I take to improve my voice enough to perform live? Good question. Have you ever performed before? Have you done any like acting or anything like that, where you've gotten in front of audiences, or any public speaking? What's kind of your background on your performances so far, Summer T? And I'm probably not pronouncing summer right. It's got two little dots over it. Sorry. I'm not very good at some of these other pronunciations. Hey, Smoochy Poo, nice to have you here today. Thank you. Nice to be seen by you. So Summer T asked, does falsetto and head voice harm the vocal cords? Does falsetto and head voices harm vocal cords? No, I don't think so necessarily. In other words, I can go into falsetto right now and there's no harm done. There's no damage there. Now, if I sang all my life there, yes, because it would be, I would be using not all of my vocal cord in the production of the falsetto, or maybe only a portion, or not fully engaging all of the muscle and so forth. And so it would be as if I were only, like a rough comparison to me might be something like, well, when I walk, I only use my hamstrings, but I don't use my quadriceps. So over time, you lose what you don't use. And so you may find that over time your voice develops a wobble, especially as you age, because there's muscle that you've never used there. And so it starts to wobble a little bit. In that case, it could be over long term damaging. And head voice doesn't harm your voice. Head voice is a really healthy condition. George, backing up now, responding to some of the questions I asked him. This is again George Beeman, who is from Paradise, California, where the fires were. Because the house was on a corner lot, the fire did not jump the street. How about that? Out of the number of units of townhouses, only 6 burned completely from 66. Very interesting, George. What an amazing story you've been living. Margina TV says no, it's called harket or murky, more like riffs and runs. We practice on harmonium, old instrument. Yeah, thanks. I think that's really a nice distinction, Margina TV, to distinguish the difference between vibrato and the harkat, or murky. So that's the difference between classical Indian music and vibrato that's used in the classical Indian music versus a vibrato in the West. Okay, Summer, I'm taking your yes out of context here. I'm not sure. Oh, maybe that I'm pronouncing it right. So, hi TJ, nice to have you here. Do not have a regular process for practicing vibrato, but when I am 100% relaxed while singing, my voice has vibrato that is very pronounced. It seems to come up from deep within my being. I think it does. I think that's an interesting feeling, and I understand that feeling. Martina says you should watch Nanya More, Coke Studio, Pakistan, to get an idea of what an Indian or Pakistani vibrato really is. It's like damn fast. Thanks, Margina. I'd like to follow up on that. So thanks very much for that tip there and and pointing us in that direction. Georgia says I'm a professional singer and performer. Oh, let me see. Okay. How do I know I can use my voice in a healthy way? So Georgia's as a pro living in Lebanon. So great to have you here. Great to have you here today. I would say this, George. After a performance, how's the voice feel? And over a period of time, how's the voice feeling? If you're feeling a little bit, and I just reflect back on some of my students I've had. One student from Florida who performed pretty much every night in some of the clubs in Florida where he lives, was feeling some tension that he didn't want, and it was starting to kind of like slightly introduce some a bit of hoarseness, a real tiredness in his voice. And in that as we worked together a little bit, there was a little bit of a pulled chest, and so that particular way of singing, in this case, George's Tawil, was enough to cause some fatigue and some vocal issues for him. And he was concerned that if he continued doing that in the long run, that it might, he might not be able to answer the bell. He might not be able to get up and sing the next night. And so that's kind of an easy way to think about this is, are you experiencing some issues? And if you are, it's likely that's not because you can't sing and speak professionally, but there may be something in the technique that you could tweak that might take that a little bit of slight abuse off to get you in a healthy place. All right, so enough a little chit chat. It's 1:15, and let me address some of these issues here with vibrato. First of all, I'm going to put them in three things. Number one, you've got to experience vibrato. Many of us who don't have vibrato, we can't learn it until we start to experience it. So I'm going to just give us a simple exercise to experience it. Number two, to experience it longer. We can experience it briefly, but to experience it longer, and then, or in other words, maybe experience it sustaining it. And then the last part of that is to apply it once you're able to sustain the vibrato, applying it in a song. Now those are three basic things. There are probably other elements to this, but let's jump on the first one here. If you're singing, if you're trying to develop your vibrato, let me just say I think it's okay to begin. I mean, there's a lot of other elements here. Once you get it, then you want to be able to sing it anywhere. Vibrato high, low, bottom of your voice, top of your voice, in the middle of the voice. You want to be able to do it everywhere. And so those are issues that are going to have to be addressed. But number one, you can't, for me, when I sang anything, I sang it with a straight tone. It just seems ridiculous to me now because I've done it for 20 years now, but until I was 43 years old, I could not sing with any vibrato at all. And so in order for me to start to learn it, I had to, well, first of all, I had to believe that it's possible. And by the way, it is. Now, a video coming up this Friday that I'm going to be posting is more about this vibrato. It's more about the truth about vibrato. So I'll leave that for then. But so I'm going to give you a real simple thing to do, and that is get that little, if you just do just by shaking my hands, I can start to feel what vibrato feels like to me. Now, that may not be pure vibrato, and I'm not going to talk about now whether that's right to do or wrong to do. I'm just saying that's going to induce vibrato, or the feeling of vibrato. Now, that's the first step. You've got to have an opportunity to begin to feel that. Now, you could also take it and just say, that's for the guys. Up here, ladies, just go down to, like, this is down the middle C. Or lower. Now, that's got to be the first step. Why is this the first step? We have to introduce to our nervous system what it feels like. Now, is this pure, unassisted vibrato? No. But I couldn't do that until I began to feel that. Or you can do it this way. Just do alternating between two pitches. Now, I'm going to guess you try that and you won't be able to do it the first time. Talk about that in a second. The nice thing about this is almost my little kids in my studio that come in and can't do vibrato, or my adults who can't do vibrato, I can get them to at least start to feel a slight feeling of what it might be, what it might feel like to them, because there's this bit of a pulse feeling. So principle number one, you've got to experience it, even if it's just for a moment. You've got to start feeling that. Is that enough that you can, can you do that much and just kind of feel what it might feel like to be able to feel the vibrato going? Just that little bit. Just that much. We've got to have that first. Why? Because we're introducing something to our nervous system, to our, to the brain. It's down the spinal cord and out into all of the places in the body where there are neurons connected to the nerves and connected to the spinal cord and up to the brain stem and into the head. We've got to experience that. It's the beginning. If you've never felt it, and I hadn't, then how can you do it? How can you learn to do it if you've never felt it? Just that simple little thing can have a huge impact on us. Okay, let me take a couple comments. Summer T says, I probably will probably sing a song by Muse, and how can I control my voice? I will probably sing a song by Muse, and how can I control my voice and breathing while jumping and performing? Summer T, I don't quite understand. I will probably sing a song by Muse, M-U-S-E. I'm not sure what that means, but I do know that how can I control my voice and breathing while jumping and performing? It's hard. It's hard. I've been in some musical theater where we're dancing and singing at the same time, and it's hard. Fortunately, in musical theater, at least, and maybe in your situation too, you will be rehearsing. So as soon as you can, memorize the words, get the words and get the song memorized. Even if it's not perfect, memorize the song so that you can do the song while you're learning the choreography, while you're performing, while you're jumping, whatever it is you're doing. And all I can say is start doing some running or walking, get some aerobics going, because having breath to be able to sing while you're exercising, basically, jumping and moving and performing, you've got to have good air supply, right? If you don't have enough air, then you can't do either of those things. Akshay says, I'm an amateur singer, I try to fake vibrato. Yeah, so let's look at, you've heard the word fake it until you make it. Let's not use the word fake. It's vibrato. We're just having to induce the vibrato. We have to jump start it. We have to get the engine turned on. It's like a little, like charging the battery or something. You connect it to the car battery and you charge it with a volt, electric volt, just to get the engine turning over to start. But if the engine doesn't start, if we can't induce that to begin with, then our nervous system has nothing to memorize. That's what we're trying to do. Just feeling it a little bit helps the nervous system to begin it introduces this new neurofeedback to our nervous system. Okay, all right, I just got to do that more. So in terms of practice, you guys, and that's why I asked this question, do you have a regular process of practicing? We want to do this enough, even if it's just this. You start feeling silly, but if you do that several times a day, I think you're going to discover something, which is number 2. number two is you've got to experience it and sustain it. We've got to experience it and sustain it. So we have to experience it enough that the nervous system begins to memorize it. So do this or do these others. And I'm going to be introducing, I'm going to actually come out with a course on vibrato. It'll be in about, probably about 35, 40 days. And so I'll be giving out more information on this in the next, 5 to 6 weeks. But we've got to be able to experience the vibrato enough that we start getting some muscle memory, that the vocal cords begin to remember the feeling and be able to do it on their own, to initiate the feeling. So that's a little bit of a jump there, but I'll explain that in a second. Let me just catch up on a couple of these. Akshay says, I've heard that if you practice singing like a siren, depends on where the siren is, where you're from, Akshay. It helps to sing vibrato. I don't know. I have never tried it, but it sounds like it interesting. Has it helped you, Akshay? Summer T says, after I sing 3 or 4 or 5 songs, my voice weakens a lot, and my teacher said that I was singing in the wrong way. I think he said that I was singing from my throat. Maybe that is the problem. So, Summer T, I sing from my throat. That's where my vocal cords are. My vocal cords are right here. So, and then I send the vibration here, and I make words in my mouth, and and it kind of spin. The resonance kind of vibrates in my throat. So, I think we all sing from the throat. So that's a really very obtuse description of what they think you're doing. My guess is probably the larynx is coming up, or maybe there's not enough presence of chest voice. Maybe the vocal cords aren't coming together firmly, or maybe you're pulling the chest voice too high. Those are 3 things that I could say are possibilities that may be causing this to fatigue and start to give out a little bit. George says, thanks a lot, Chuck. I hope we can talk again and see you in the video. Well, thanks, George. I guess do you have to take off? We're still doing stuff here if you can hang on. Muse is a band. Thanks, Mike. So that question in context, probably a song by Muse. I see. Probably sing a song by Muse. And how can I control my voice and breathing while jumping and performing? That's an issue of practice. Summer T. And I would ask, do you have to jump and sing all during the thing? I mean, every second, or can you do it periodically? Like jump up and down and then play or something, and then and sing, and then start jumping up and down again, and or can you take turns doing it or something, rather than have to do it every second? I would probably want to choreograph it so that you're doing, doing it at certain times, but not every second. Just like a show, you choreograph it, you plan it out. Okay, so Because has a lot of Oz in it by the Beatles. Smoochie Poo says, you're exactly right. How do I replicate something if I don't know how it feels? Perfect. Yeah, so we have to have and it doesn't really take much, you guys, because I think the vocal cords are intelligent. In my opinion, they've got the neurons. There's I think they can learn. Well, otherwise, why would we train them? Why do we practice them? Why do we it's the equivalent of going to the golf course and hit, buckets of balls. You're trying to train your body new muscle memory, or learning how to. I wrote down a couple things here. Learning how to swim, learning how to learning to run. Then there's the question: are you learning? Okay, so you want to learn to run, or do you want to learn to run in the Olympics? Or do you want to learn how to sing? like at home, or do you want to learn how to sing on Broadway? You want to learn how to swim, or do you want to swim the English Channel? I mean, so there's all these variations here of these tiers of training that we're trying to do. But we don't get anywhere if we can't do the beginning. I can't run if I can't walk. Can't walk if I can't crawl. I get, all these different things kind of build on each other. So the second thing that must happen is we've got to sustain something. Now that we've felt it, we've got to keep it going if we're going to use it in a song. And so how does that happen? Well, number one, we want to do it routinely. And so I'd say, if you don't have vibrato, I would be doing this several times a day. I wish I kept a journal on my learning on this, but I tried working it in everything I was doing, and so I think that's a big, a good tip is to, in your exercises, in songs that you're practicing and so forth, I would try and implement those into your song. But what we've got to do right now is we've got to practice not just doing this, but we've got to keep it going. So you can do it longer, or ladies up here. Oh, oh. But eventually, what we've got to do is really going to make a difference is to stop moving the hands and keep the vibrato going after we've stopped moving the hands. So, oh. Now, I guarantee you, unless you're gifted, it's probably going to stop when you stop your hands. Oh, oh, and, it stops. So, you've got to repeat it. Oh, or let's add it this way. Say, she. Now here's a mistake I see commonly. A student will go, she. As soon as they stop their hands, they stop the air. No, so give your vocal cords some air. Give the vocal cords a chance to experience holding this. She. Probably the number one thing I see happen is that it feels so awkward and so unusual and so like freaky, weird, that we just stop. She. And then we stop. No, you stop your hands, and we stop giving the voice, giving the supply of air the vocal cords need. No, keep that air coming. So take a nice big breath. She. Now, if it stops, she. Start it up again. Just keep after it. So start it, and then stop and see if you can keep it going just a little bit. Maybe it's just 5 inches of it, so to speak. Start it up again. Keep holding, keep it going. So you never know when it's going to okay. Now it's going to take off. Vocal cords say, I get it. I know what that feels like. Okay, I can do that on my own. Here's what you're also going to find out. She. Right when you run out of air, right when you start to stop, you can hear it. It kicks in. Be aware of those moments. It happens all the time with students learning the vibrato. It's just that last little moment. And all of a sudden, there's a little bit of vibrato there. right at the very end of when they're out of air or they're giving up. You know, they, oh, that can't be real though. I mean, that was me. I don't do vibrato, and oh, well, what was that? It was vibrato. It started to come in. So this is one thing that you've got to do is you have to experience it first, and secondly, you've got to sustain it. You've got to hold it out long enough that muscle memory can kick in. Let me just look at a couple comments here. I think I'm falling behind. So thanks to you guys for all your great comments here. George says, I'm trying to refresh the page, lost a video portion. Voice comes in and out, but at times you can hear, I can hear you speaking. Oh, sorry, George. I don't know if it's something that everybody's experiencing or not. Maybe, refreshing the page. Okay. I bet that when this thing uploads, it'll all be there. It should be all present, unless it's something on my end, but I don't see any problems here, George. Frederick says, Frederick Intel's channel. Thanks as always, Chuck, for your videos. Have a good day. Thanks for joining us today. Okay. Magneet says, just yesterday I've heard Seth Riggs that the vibrato is good when it goes above the vibrating note, and when it vibrates below the note, it's a bad vibrato. Yeah. So Magneet, what he's talking about is if this is the pitch that it spins up on the top of the pitch, it doesn't dip down below. So if it's E, but so it's up here. E, but if it starts to go down below, E, dips down into the pitch or below the pitch, E, then it slows down and it's a wobble. So exactly right. Yeah, vibrato is good, but we want to keep it spinning above the. So in other words, if that's the pitch, E, we don't want to go below it. We want to stay on and above. E, so E. Built in with that, built inside that vibrato E is that whole note. Its presence that is felt there. But if I dip down below the note, the bottom note, down into the pitch, down into that, and down below it, E, you can hear the pitch starts to sink down. It's one of the benefits of vibrato, by the way, is it does help our tone, our pitch. It rounds that note out. It's a really valuable thing. Mike says, how many seconds should be able to sustain a note? Trouble getting past 10 or so seconds. If you can do 10, great, Mike. I think it's more of a matter of how long, how much air can you get, and what the note is, and how loud it is, and how soft, and all those kinds of things. I think maybe a better question is how fast is the vibrato supposed to be going? And if it's anywhere from like 10 or 6 to 9 seconds, or 6 to 8 seconds per second of this cycling, of this oscillation. If it goes too fast, it's a kind of it sounds like a bleeding, lamb. They call that tremolo. And if it's too slow, then it's a wobble. So we want it to be 6 to 8 seconds per cycle, or spinning 6 to 8 seconds per second, and 6 to 8 cycles per second, and above the pitch, and not down into the pitch. So thanks, the great comment, you guys. So Mike says the sound and video is good here. So George, I think it's on your end, and come back to this for the part you missed. It should be a whole production. Will O, say hi. Will O, nice to have you here today. Jorge says everything's okay. Great. So it's probably, George, sounds like it's a internet issue on your end, and hopefully the video will turn out fine. Okay, so application to song. So the nervous system has to experience it, number one. Number two, you have to have recur enough over a period of time that the nervous system begins to remember it. Now think about that for a second. Most of the time we're going to be, it may not be immediate. I don't know, take anything. Learn how to, when you're learning how to ride a bicycle, think back on the early days. Some of you are probably gifted bicycle riders, but think back. How many times did you go out and have somebody hold on to your bike or had training wheels before you could do it on your own? Just because, how you're riding your bike and then whoever's helping you takes their hands off and, you're going down the street and you look behind you and you fall because, you didn't know you were doing it by yourself. And, so there's a process. It takes some time. And I'm going to guess that sometimes vibrato can take longer than riding a bike. Well, let's say you learn how to ride a bike. You get it going, but then you really want to do it. You want to be able to use it. You want to be able to ride down the hill without any hands or whatever, or be a really good biker. Or maybe you want to learn to race bikes, or maybe you want to do mountain biking or road racing. And, so there's then a whole nother level that we're not even talking about. We're just talking about being able to do it, right? Think about walking. How many times you've seen little babies, they're crawling and then they, one time they may stand up and then they sit right back down or fall down. And then they might stand up and then somebody's, they got a piece of candy in front of them and they fall towards it. And then they take maybe a step or two. And then they hold on to the couch and go over to the chair. And then maybe they walk out to the middle of the room to your outstretched hands. So there's this process. It's not all in the same evening, right? It's over a period of days, weeks maybe. And then they walk from one side of the room to the other side of the room, but they're going for the couch or the chair or whatever, and that might be a week or two. And they might fall and crack their head sometime and give up on it for a day or two. Not usually. They're back up trying it again. You ever seen little kids with multiple bumps on their heads? Well, that's kind of what we're doing. Let me read to you page 39 here, because in this practice, there's this chapter here, embrace the learning to love the plateau. Loving the plateau. Well, we've all been on a plateau of learning, right? And that's why I asked you, do you have a regular regimen of practicing? Sometimes we feel like practice is not getting us anywhere, when in fact we are. We're on a plateau. Let me just, so George Leonard, he says, if our life is a good one, a life of mastery, most of it will be spent on the plateau. The plateau is at top of a little mountain, and then there's this flat area where there's nothing going up or down. It's just like, you've heard the saying, we've plateaued, or I've plateaued. If not, a large part of it may well be spent in restless, distracted, ultimately self-destructive attempts to escape the plateau. The question remains, where in our upbringing, our schooling, our career, are we explicitly taught to value, to enjoy, even to love the plateau? The long stretch of diligent effort with no seeming progress. Where are we taught that? Again, this is from Mastery from George Leonard. He talked about how he was, when he was younger, he found Aikido, which is a martial arts discipline. He said, I was fortunate in my middle years to have found an Aikido, a discipline so difficult and resistant to the quick fix that it showed me the plateau in sharp, bold relief. When I first started, I simply assumed that I would steadily improve. My first plateaus were relatively short, and I could ignore them. After about a year and a half, however, I found I was forced to recognize that I was on a plateau of formidable proportions. This recognition brought a certain shock and disappointment, but somehow I persevered and finally experienced an apparent spurt of learning. The next time my outward progress stopped, I said to myself, oh damn, another plateau. After a few more months, there was another spurt of progress, and then, of course, the inevitable plateau. This time, something marvelous happened. I found myself thinking, oh boy, another plateau. Good. I can just stay on it and keep practicing. Sooner or later, there'll be another spurt. It was one of the warmest moments on my journey. This is great advice to us, you guys. We all get on these plateaus, and part of the problem with learning to sing in general, these principles apply to the overall learning to sing, is that we get on plateaus and we stop practicing, or we give up, and it ends up being that we're on a plateau. We just need to hang in there because something might like this happen, and then we make this spurt of progress. Sure enough, there'll be another plateau. So a lot of people, when they start learning, they start feeling that, but they can't do it yet. And they just need to keep practicing this, and there's a lot of other ways to get this, which I'll be talking more about as the weeks come along, but it'll be all available in the course that I'll be doing. But just on this other one, maybe you can't do that yet. Don't give up on it. You're on a plateau. Keep practicing it. Get gradually faster. You're going to find that one day it's going to kind of like start to go. And you'll, and it'll be elusive. But don't give up. So stay with this, stay on that plateau and embrace it. Just keep working at it day after day. Practice that same thing. Over and over again. And maybe you can't sustain it at first. So you practice it, inducing it repeatedly. Multiple times while you're holding it. Oh, it did it, I felt like it just took off right then, all by itself, because I wasn't even thinking about it, and it started to go vibrato. Of course, I've got vibrato now, so it does that easier. I have to work not to do it, but so you get the idea. So this application now, the second step being experiencing and sustain it. Why? Because we're trying to memorize that muscle memory thing. And again, this principle of you're being on a plateau, but you're staying there with that practice over and over again, day after day after day. Eventually things are going to kick in, and you'll get off that plateau with vibrato this time, and you'll hit another plateau. But the point is that you keep embracing. You love the plateau. You keep embracing the plateau with steady, regular practice. Vibrato and all the other things with your voice that you're doing. Now, application to song. It's something very simple. Let's just take a simple song. Hey, you just try it just on. You can do it with every word or every letter of the alphabet. A, B, C, A, B, C, D. I'm not saying this is the way you sing it. Just practicing the vibrato. Or you could do it this way. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, and V, W, X, and Y, and Z. Now I know my ABCs. Next time, won't you, what is it, spell with me? Just take something very simple, one of your own songs that you learned when you were small, and practice it with a song that you grew up with that you can remember, and pause on part of it, and put that same thing in there, and practice doing it that way. This is the beginning of application to a song where you have to hold out a whole note or a half note. Okay. Let me take a couple questions or a couple comments. And with the fish shaking, it takes a few seconds to get it started. Then I ran out of breath. Yeah, just take a bigger breath and try and start the vibrato as soon as you can. Maybe you could do this. Take a big breath, and don't start it until you know the vibrato's going. So start right off with vibrato if you can. Jorge says, so what do you think of Freddie Mercury's vibrato? I've heard him. I've seen his video, and I'm not sure exactly if it's the same vibrato every time, but I guess I thought well enough about it. I didn't think about it. Whatever it was, it seemed okay for what he was doing. So hadn't given it much thought, Jorge. Inking says, Chuck, when you once develop vibrato, does it spin automatically, or do you have to keep it going fast from the two pitches? Ink, that's a great question. And yes, you do have to work on that cycle. You have to work on that cycle. Like, for example, as I age, I notice, and if I lay off practice for a while, I notice my vibrato slows. And I don't want to have slow vibrato. So I've got to practice it. And so the same thing applies. She. Do it faster. She. So I have to practice it, cycling it faster, maybe faster than Now, I got to say, stop. Because maybe your problem is that you're going too fast already. If your vibrato is out of control and you can't control it, you maybe have learned. It's. I hate to say it, but I think you learned it. You've kind of picked it up on your own, and it just was a fast vibrato. I can't imitate it very well. But it's too fast, and it's too fast, and it sounds like a little lamb. Then you want to practice the other way. She. Practice the straight tone. Don't let vibrato start until you decide to start it. Practice it slow. Gradually speed it up until it's got about that 6 to 8 second spin. If it starts to take off by itself again, you start losing control, stop it. Go to straight tone again. So you may have to do the opposite of what we're doing here. Control it. Exert control over it, and then introduce it in the appropriate spin. Okay? Again, the process is that it takes a daily visit. You've got to do this every day until it's second nature. You don't have to think about it, or until you have to keep the practice up because you're getting old, and you want to keep your voice in shape and so forth. Will says, loving the plateau, and I guess learning patience is also a great quality. Will, and what's so cool about that comment is that it applies to everything. This whole idea of mastery in life, mastery, and I am not anybody to. I'm sharing a really great concept that I want more of in my life too. Okay, and that is the daily work, the daily effort, the daily. In fact, I read something else in the book where it said the people who get really good at what they're doing, They love practice. They love the process of the practice. They get into a mindset of loving the practice. Embrace the, love the plateau and love the practice. Jorge says, to me, it's automatic. In fact, I remember sometimes not to use it. I have to remember something because it comes from being relaxed. Yeah, Jorge, you're one of those lucky guys. I'd been told when I was 15 or 16 years old, if you don't have it naturally, you weren't born with it, then you don't have it. Or if you don't have it naturally, then you don't have it. That's false. You can develop it. And I had a lot of friends who had great vibrato growing up, and I sang with them. And I just thought I was not born with it. He was born with it. False. Okay, so Horace, vibrato same sensation as tremolo. No, I don't think so. Or as tremble. No, I don't think so. It is controlled at first. We don't want to be out of control with it. And I think the tremble or the tremolo is an out of control kind of experience. Jorge says, I do trembles with more breath support. I don't know exactly what you guys, if it's tremolo you're talking about. I don't, so I'm probably I'm missing the point here. Chuck, I've noticed you a lot like Seth Riggs. Thank you, Inc. I am not, he is the master. I am the, what am I? I don't know what I am. I am one of his students, one of many. Whose life has been changed by his teachings. George says, I love your rendition of ABCs. Thanks, George. It's probably not even the right words, right? I know my ABCs. I don't know if I know the song. Korf says, how many times a day should I train my voice and for how long per session? Korf, I think that it's more advantageous to do them in short periods, maybe 2 or 3 times a day, rather than long periods all at once. But it depends on what you're doing. Now, for example, when I'm in a show, musical theater show, and I'm guessing the same thing would apply to if you're a gigging artist of any kind, where you have a set list, and you're going to be singing for 45 minutes at a time, and then take a break, and you do another 45 minutes, you take a break or something, then you want to practice at least that period of time that you're singing. So so in a show, I'll go through my lines and I'll do all my songs. Depending on my show and what I'm doing, I might practice an hour. If I have, so it just depends. So practice as long as you have to perform. For those who are not actively performing, maybe you're in the learning stages of just getting vibrato, let's say. It's probably, but rather than practicing vibrato for an hour, I would say break it up. Do it 4 times a day for 10 or 15 minutes. So it kind of depends on where you're at, what you're trying to accomplish. But what happens with the repeated thing throughout the day is it gives the nervous system more encounter with that new feeling. You're kind of touching that nervous center, learning that new feeling several times a day. And I think the more that happens, the more likely you're going to, the vocal cords will get the idea and take over for you. And so then there's a whole nother level of, once you're doing it routinely, then you do it in the practices of your, in your songs as well. And that's another day, another story. Paul McCartney, so how did you end up getting it? You just one day you had it. No, I was studying this technique with one of Seth Riggs' teachers, and she said something to me about vibrato, and I said I don't have it. I've never had vibrato, and I said I wasn't born with vibrato, and she was there, and a couple other students were there. One of her kids, I remember, was there, and they said you don't have to be born with vibrato. You can develop it, and so they gave me some of these exercises. I can't. I feel bad that I don't remember exactly which exercises. I think the she, because Seth does that for sure, and some others that he does. I had to do what I'm showing you. I had to do these things to get the vibrato to start. Everything I did was straight tone. And it was like a miracle. I'm not kidding you. My only regret was I didn't know about it till I was 43. I didn't know I could do it. I thought trouble was tremolos. Okay, yeah. So, tremble. They're related, sounds like, doesn't it? Good to practice every day if you can, but you don't necessarily have to have a time limit. Whatever feels right for you. Thank you, George. Okay, you guys and gals, thank you very much for being here. Yeah, I got it. Thanks for the advice. You know, it's a process, right? And we want to embrace the process. We want to love the process, and we want to love the plateau. We want to love the practice, and that's when you get good at this. And all of us have to start someplace. Some of us are born with vibrato. But maybe we want to develop it or improve it or speed it up or slow it down or whatever the happens to be, or use it in certain places and not use it in other places and so forth. So maybe just exerting more control over it. Those are all important things. Okay, so Will says, yes, my singing teacher told me I have a natural vibrato and it comes hardwired or not at all. Good for you, Will. I'm glad you've got it natural, and it ends up being a blessing. And for those of us who don't have it, like I say, for 43 years, my thinking was, see, my teacher had her master's in vocal performance from a university, and she was a great singer and teacher in our town. So I just accepted that. I just thought, well, who wouldn't know if she doesn't know, So she was wrong. She didn't know. She didn't know. She didn't know she was wrong, but she was. For next time, Chuck, how do you manage to set a time for practicing? And how do you define your workout routine? Okay, that's a good suggestion. Maybe we could put that on the docket for the next time around. Or hey, I appreciate the suggestion. So I'm going to cut that right now, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to copy it. Okay, thanks everybody. I'm Chuck Gilmore with Power to Sing, and this was number 111 today. Remember, you can sing higher with beauty, confidence, and power, and vibrato. So I'll see you inside the next video. Thanks for joining me today. And watch for the one on Friday. It's going to be more about vibrato. It's mainly just kind of like share the message that Will has kind of shared with us. A lot of information out there about not being able to develop vibrato if you weren't born with it. I'm going to more on that on my Friday video. Thanks.